Hi, how are you? My name is Adam Montville. I'm from the Center for Internet Security. Can you guys hear me? Okay. If I start getting low, let me know. Not like this.
Low, yeah.
All right. What I'm going to talk about today is basically CIS security best practices. So basically what CIS is, and from this, what you'll get is essentially what we bring to the SAO project. Okay? All right, so we'll cover basically three things, right? The CIS approach, like basically how we do things, right? Best practices by consensus, essentially. What our AWS-specific offerings are, and basically a bit of a deeper dive into benchmarks and how those communities work. So how does the consensus process work, essentially, okay? All right, cool. So we exist to help you avoid that, or something like that, right? So compliance today, getting security and compliance right in your environment. When you have HIPAA, you've got PCI, you've got GDPR. It's right, that's RSA 2018 now, right?
Yeah.
When you have all these things to do, plus you have your own desire to actually be secure, not just compliant with something. It can be a real mess. So our goal is to help you avoid situations like this, right? And what we really want to do is just enable frictionless security. There we go. And essentially what this means is how can you get from policy to implementation quickly, right? So we want to do that efficiently. Yeah. So this is really what we want to get to, okay? When you have your enterprise security policy or your security program, it's going to have the policies that you need to implement, right? How fast can you get from writing that policy to it actually being in effect and doing some good for your enterprise and your customers, right? So what we say is start with best practices. Really, right? I think the way we look at this is, steal from us. Right? We're offering it to you for free, so it's not really stealing. But the idea is that we have experience in SOC operations. We run a cert. We pay attention to other vendors' reports, like the Verizon reports and all those things that come out. We work with vendors like even AWS. We'll just talk shop. Microsoft will talk shop. What's going on? Those all translate into vulnerability descriptions, the attack methods, the patterns, and things like that you have to care about today. And we'll take that and translate it directly into our best practices, generally through CIS Benchmarks and CIS Controls. Okay, CIS Benchmarks are essentially, you're on a particular technology, set X to Y, right? Set your password length to 20, whatever that might do for you, right? And the controls are a little higher level than that. Make sure you have a vulnerability management program, right? Things like that. So the CIS controls actually are important, and I think we heard from Jeff of Allgrass. I don't know how many of you saw that presentation, but the controls are part of that whole thing. Okay, so we annotate our benchmark. So each recommendation of the benchmark gets annotated with one or more control subcontrols, actually, right? Control or subcontrol, depending on what they say. I think the example is the best way to go here. So in the CIS controls, you'll see that one of the subcontrols basically says exactly this: minimize and sparingly use administrative privileges. That's an abstract thing, but how does that translate to a benchmark level where you're trying to actually make configuration changes? The control says very specific things also, right? Minimize administrative privileges. Use admin accounts only when they're required. Things like that. So in a benchmark, in this case, this came from an example Windows benchmark. We'll look at the different recommendations we're making and say, okay, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? Who's allowed to format and eject removable media? Only certain people are allowed to do that, right? If you follow our guidance, administrators and interactive users, you're effectively minimizing admin privileges to some degree, right? The same for recommendation 916, 1781, and so on. And we'll do this across the board for all the recommendations in all of our benchmarks. So every benchmark that we publish today is mapped directly into the controls. Now what does that do, right? Okay, what's it do here? For us, it gets us this, essentially, right? So if we take where the rubber meets the road of the CIS benchmarks and map that straight into the controls, we have resources that are freely available out in the marketplace that are reputable that map to all these other things, Allgress included for that matter, right? And other GRC partners. So once you start with the best practices, that gives you one thing, but it generally gives you work unless you can automate some things, right, or use proper tools. And that's really what this is about. So Secure Suite is a membership offering that CIS has that has some tooling included. We do have a variety of CIS Benchmarks certified security software vendors. AWS actually is part of that. Drawing a blank on some of the other partners. Sorry, Michelle. And of course, in the AWS environment, we have our hardened virtual images, our hardened server images. So specific in AWS, we're in all regions in commercial, we're in GovCloud, and we're in IC. Okay. And we also have AWS-Specific Benchmarks. And right now we have two. There's AWS Foundations and the 3-tier web architecture benchmark. And we're presently working on an RDS benchmark along with some profiles for specific database faces or flavors, whatever you guys call them, right? Whether it's MySQL, MS SQL, what have you. Those are on the way. They're basically in process. So if anybody's interested and wants to contribute to make it a benchmark, by all means, help us out. Come see me after or whatever. Go to workbench.cisecurity.org, register, sign up. It's all good. It's free. Cool. We have started a very small effort, so it seems kind of weird to mention it here, I guess, but a very small effort to provide helper scripts. Right? So what we were finding is that some of the users for our AMIs weren't always using the latest AMI that we publish. So for example, on Windows, we update that once a month. Every time patches come out, we create a new one that's fully patched, fully loaded, ready to go. Yeah.
So we have AMIs from you guys already in our production environment, but do we get emails when there's a new AMI that we can swap it out with, or how does that work?
You can. So without getting into the weeds here, so we have SNS set up, a real short story. We've got SNS set up so that you can get it via email. We get stuff set up via text message and all these other things.
And then we can just, instead of swapping out my AMIs, we can just provide a script I can run on the server itself.
Correct, yeah. So well, the script would be what you run to identify the latest released version of that particular benchmark in AMI form, if that makes sense. So what we did was we put this out there to see if there was an interest in having more things like this. And we found that there was some interest. So what I'm interested in hearing about is, well, okay, that's a very easy start, right? What else can we do to help you keep using those AMIs so that you start secure, which is really what that's about, right? So tell us what you'd like to see, right? Feedback at cisecurity.org. Talk to me after this. Reach out any way you can, really. Okay. Sausage making, right? Or how the benchmarks are born. This is a good one. Okay. Next. So basically, yeah, it's consensus based, right? We look at members, we look at the market, we hear people on Twitter. Hey, why isn't there a benchmark for this technology or that technology, or when is this update coming, right? We listen to what's needed, and we try to form a consensus community around that. So we build that consensus team, which consists of CIS members, vendors will come to play. So for example, Microsoft in our Microsoft community comes and helps us out, AWS helps us out a lot. We'll have subject matter experts, sometimes college students, whoever's interested and really wants to participate can come and participate. We kind of provide guidelines around that. But that's the deal. So we build that consensus team, then we define scope. So basically, like for RDS, for example, okay, what exactly in RDS are we going to care about? Maybe we don't care about everything right away, maybe we do. We decide what the scope is, and then we just start work. This is just to give you an idea. I know it's an eye chart, probably, at least from the back, right? But it's just to give you an idea that we do actually have a somewhat formalized process for how we do this. So here's all the establish the team, define the scope, do the work. This is all review, and then tickets come in, right? So anybody can create a ticket. If you have a question about a given recommendation or something we're saying about a benchmark, you can make a ticket and say, hey, I think this really ought to be 15, and why, right? You might want to defend that, right? But then once all those tickets are handled, we'll go through a 2-week last call period. And then we'll go ahead and publish that benchmark document. And then one of a few things will happen. Time passes, right? Technology might be updated. Maybe it's just a period of time and we want to make sure that there's nothing new that's threatening that. We'll revisit it, and we'll update the benchmark as necessary. So in your community, like if you ever work in a community or see a community that's not working this way, we want to know about it, because really these are the key principles about being in a community that's based on consensus, right? You want to be transparent and you want to include people. So that basically means be nice, right? Why'd you recommend that? That's done. That's not the way to go, right? You don't want to do that. We want to consistently communicate. So we've had issues in some communities where people will go off and do work, but not in the system, and then come back later and dump the whole body of work on the whole community, and people don't respond to that, right? So communicate consistently, that's another key principle. And establish a reasonable cadence. So what we found is that working asynchronously is good, you can get it done. But if you can establish, say, monthly meetings, or depending on how urgent the need is, weekly meetings, bi-weekly, whatever makes sense to your core team of people, that's good. It's a really good thing to do. So, what can you do? So there's 3 disciplines, essentially, in every community that we need, right? We need subject matter experts for the technology that we're talking about, right? Ideally, we'd like to see technical writers get engaged, because sometimes the people who understand all the security and all the technology don't know how to write, right? And it's just a fact of life. Or they don't like to, right? They don't want to. Right? Some people just don't like doing docs. And of course, we need people who know security, irrespective of technology, irrespective of writing docs. If we can find those 3 talents and put them into a community, it's great. We've seen that work very well. So we need that. So if you have any of those skills to bring, by all means, and you have time, desire, come and do that. And what do you get out of that? Well, you can get CPE credits with organizations like ISC Squared. You put it on your resume. You get your authorship or contributorship actually in the document itself. Swag, we'll get you some swag, some social media recognition. We're good at that. And of course, that good feeling, when you do the right thing. So it's a plea, do the right thing. That can help us out. Okay, that's it. It's easy, I'm just going to go to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you very much for your time today. Come visit us online. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. If there's not, then drinks, I guess.